acquiring the old State House. And in our initial discussions of the process that they would be going through, asking for a new vision of what to do with the building. And it occurred to me that the synergies between a television network whose primary role is to educate citizens about state government and to engage people in the process so that they better understand how our democracy operates, coupling that with a place so rooted in the beginnings of our democracy that is a symbol of our state, is a symbol of our government, and a symbol of our society. Those two together really made a lot of sense. And so I remember the conversation that I initiated with Pat Sheehan, the chair of our board. And I said, you know, they're going to be issuing a request for proposals for a new vision for the old State House. And I think we should submit our vision.
And after he said, are you nuts?
Well, he did. No, he just kind of smirked at me and gave me a funny face and said, what? And then we started talking about it, and he got it immediately. It's like, you know, you're right. What this place should be used for, really give it a purpose, is to tell the stories of all the people who have come before us that have shaped who we are as a people. And couple that with contemporary conversations. In many cases, the problems being faced back then are the same problems we're facing now. The conversations continue. And so we decided we're going to submit a proposal. And I remember when I first came to Bill and said, we're going to submit a proposal for this. And his reaction, his initial reaction, was the same as Pat's at first. Was, what? But then we talked about it, and Bill got it just like that, too.
You know, at that point, we had been running CPN for close to a decade, and we were pretty good at it. And our mission had always been focused on educating citizens about state government, providing them with information so that they could be better informed, more engaged citizens. And what made it click for me when Paul first started talking about this idea was the realization that we had done a great deal making information available, but answering the question for people of how do you use that effectively, and what does it even mean to be an engaged citizen. CPN didn't necessarily have the ability to do that all by itself. We needed something else to round out what we said our overall educational goals were. And when Paul and I started talking more and more about using the lessons from the past and as a springboard to moving into contemporary government and public policy in the old State House, and the programming that we could mount from here being a part of that, and being able to amplify whatever happened here through the platform of CPN, yeah, it just made sense. And having a museum background myself didn't hurt either, but it really very quickly became, this seems crazy to everybody else when it makes perfect sense to us.
So I remember when we submitted our proposal, we were one of a few groups that submitted this proposal to the RFP. And we were called in to make a presentation. And I said to Bill, you know, we have a media background, so, you know, I would envision the technology piece of what we bring to this discussion being more like, you know, if you can picture, like in the Harry Potter movies, where the portraits are actually talking, I thought that would be a great way of making the point during this presentation. So, although Bill was a big part of that presentation, he wasn't in the room. We actually brought him in through a video interface.
Bill from an undisclosed location.
Yes. And we're trying to make the point that the way technology is heading, integration of technology into this vision can be very exciting. And So in the end, we were given an opportunity to manage the site. We were told that there would be some sort of a transition period. I think it was in the month of August, was it?
August 1st?
Yes.
2000.
And so we figured, all right, we'll handle this transition, and we'll have time to bring staff in. And then it was announced to us at the very last minute that that transition was not going to happen, and that we would have to be running the building on Monday. And that was a Friday. So Bill and I and Paul's staff showed up, the three of us, and we managed the welcome desk. I can't remember if we actually had visitors on that very first day.
We did.
But
Not that many.
it was a struggle for us until we were able to get to the point where we could bring the proper staff. The biggest challenge was finding the director, and I remember when I first reached out to you via email, basically saying, "Do you remember me?" And your response was, "Of course I do." And I said, you may have heard that this TV network kind of took over the old State House. And your response was, "Oh, yes, I heard about that." So I was able to drive down to Lebanon, where you were working, and had this conversation. It was really odd because this historical society building was loaded with flies, and there's flies everywhere. We're sitting on the couch and the flies are just all over the place. I'm not exaggerating.
A little bit.
Yeah. And so I explained what we were thinking of doing and how we were going to handle things, and asked you whether you might consider coming to join us. And your initial response was, "I don't think so." But then, after a while, you got back to me and said, maybe I'm thinking I might want to throw my hat in the ring. Why? What changed it for you?
I don't know. I remember when I first heard that I was at a celebration for Connecticut Humanities, and somebody came up to me and said, "Well, have you heard that the state in all its wisdom has given the old State House to TV station?" And I was appalled. How can that possibly be? I just thought that was terrible. But then, when I realized it was you, I thought, well, that's not a bad idea. And when you came out and we talked, I loved being in Lebanon. It was a great place to be, even with flies. And the thing for me is when you work, I've worked in historical societies and with a lot of historical societies, and you always feel like your mission is to teach history so that people can become better citizens. But it's very hard to get to that point where you're actually feeling like you're doing something definitive and real about citizenship and good civics. So this seemed to me like a perfect opportunity to do that, because it took history, but it also had a mission of civics, which meant that civics wasn't a goal or a nice add-on, it was what had to be done. So, so that was really intriguing to me, and I'd always loved the building since I was a little kid. I mean, I always say it's personal to me. My uncle, who's 89 now, used to pick up his newspapers outside the old State House and deliver them because he was a paper boy in the 30s.
Wow.
So there's always been a connection for me personally to the old State House. And so when you put that together with the opportunity to work in a completely different kind of environment with CPAN, that's exciting to me. I thought it was probably a pretty impossible task, but that is what appeals to me. And that's what I like about CPAN, because you guys look around and see what's impossible, and then you say, well, let's do it.
That's right. The impossible just takes a little longer.
That's right. So it's a wonderful environment to be in, because there's always a challenge. And the whole setup of working hand in hand with the Office of Legislative Management, that is a kind of setup I've never had any experience with, and I'm guessing almost no one has in the museum world. So there was a lot of possibility, there was a lot of challenge, and good people to work with. So it just seemed like a great idea. And having a building on top of that. It just made it perfect.
I remember when we were trying to find professional staff for the building, you had started out as the person that Paul was going to for advice. And whether it was about staffing or other ideas we had, you were the person that he kept bouncing things off of. And after we talked to a bunch of candidates and the perfect leader had not emerged, we were sitting in his office and kind of both looked at each other around the same time and said, well, you've been going to Sally for all of this advice. Why aren't we talking to Sally about this? And she doesn't want to do this. Well, how do you know? And that, I think, is what precipitated that long drive down to Flytown, Lebanon, to have that fateful conversation. And from my perspective, not a moment too soon, because before you and Rebecca and the rest of the professional staff arrived, the only museum professional we had in the house was me, which was not a position that I was especially comfortable in. I was, as you both know, I ran marketing for a little while at Mystic Seaport, and as an adjunct of that, visitor services also reported to me. So I knew how the gate worked. I knew how the overarching process of moving people through a museum worked. And I remember that first day when we had to show up, August 1st, when there was nothing in the building and we had no programming, kind of psyched myself up saying, well, you've done this before, you've done this before. I showed everybody this video that Mystic Seaport put together on the day that Amistad launched back in 2000, where we had 10,000 people on the grounds and state and local dignitaries and the ambassador from Sierra Leone and you name it, and said, okay, if I can get through this in one piece, I can get through day one at the old State House in one piece. But I realized early on, I was the paramedic and I'm just keeping the body stable waiting for the doctor to show up. So when we finally zeroed in on you being the person who was going to help us realize the vision that we had for this building, was, okay, how fast can we talk her into this? How soon can she get here?
Yeah, well, I gave a talk on Sunday, I think it was November 9th in Lebanon, and on the 10th I was here. And I remember Rebecca started before I did, and she would call me up and she'd say, there's nothing to do. Did I do the right thing taking this job? I'm so bored, there's not enough for me to do. I'm used to doing so much more. I said, just wait. And now she jokes about that all the time because she's never said that since. But the other thing that was interesting about this whole experimental setup, I think of it as, people were saying to me, are you sure this is a good career move? You're going to go work for a TV network and this odd setup? Are you sure that's the right thing to do? And I felt it was the right thing to do, but I kept looking at that job description thinking, I can't do this. But there was so much support and such a good sense of how we would move forward together that I guess I realized I could do it, or I thought I could do it, and I applied.
And you did. Pulled it all together.
And it's so funny to hear that keep coming up, because for Paul and me, who were here prior to the old State House, that was the moment when we had to go and convince the board of directors that this was a good idea for the company to pursue. That was really the moment when we declared that CPAN's not a TV network. It's an educational institution. CTN's what we've done so far to realize that. But there are other stories to tell. There are other ways to help people learn how to be better citizens. And this is an opportunity that we will regret not having capitalized on if we don't take it. And that was enough for the board to give us the green light to submit the proposal and to start ourselves down this road. But that continual process of defining ourselves as educators and what we're really here to do, however it's expressed. We're still doing that today. It's very exciting not to be limited by, oh, you guys are a TV station, oh, you guys are a museum. Well, we're all of those things and we're none of those things because we're trying to do something really important here. We're using storytelling tools that nobody ever dreamed would work well together. And wow, they did.
The synergies between the two projects have been really impressive. And I think the fact that we can use the programming here at the Old State House, as our chairman, Pat Sheehan, says, you know, we have got one heck of a beautiful studio to use when we have those conversations at noon or any of the town hall meetings. Our ability to create that type of programming for the television network and for the audience that attends those events really creates a very powerful tool. And really what we're talking about, and get right down to it, I remember when we initiated that conversation with the board and I asked the question, why are we doing what we're doing? Why are we televising the events of the legislature? We're not doing it to put the legislators on TV. That's not our purpose. Our purpose is to get people to understand that every day important decisions are being made, and we need to be able to understand what the process is in order to participate in a meaningful way. And in that same way, the events that have taken place in this building that have really shaped the democracy that we know of today. So the two coming together really create this opportunity to have tools. The Old State House is a tool. The television network, CPAN, is a tool. They are tools being used by this nonprofit with a civic engagement and civics education mission to fulfill that mission. And the two of them work extremely well together.